Greetings, students. This is a review for Chapter 14 from your textbook, Basics of Biblical Hebrew. And if you did not master Chapter 13, I suggest don't go any further. Please make sure that you understand the strong call perfect verb paradigms, and that you have basically memorized it and understand how the endings work and why they work the way they do. And if you have that memorized, then you can move on, because we're going to start talking about weak verbs in this next chapter. And if you don't have the strong verbs memorized, then it's going to be very, very hard, because we're constantly going to be comparing the strong verbs and how they work with weak verbs. And basically, as we're studying them, we'll be highlighting all the differences. Well, you can't see the difference if you don't know what the strong verbs are supposed to be doing. So it makes absolutely no sense to people. So please make sure you get chapter 13 before you move on to chapter 14. So we will be continuing, and let's see about those weak verbs now. So here we are with the weak verbs. Remember what weak verbs are. They're the verbs that are going to contain gutturals and features that will make them behave in an unusual way. The chapter is actually located on page 151 in your textbook, so if you want to follow along, that might be helpful. But we're still looking at the call stem at this point, and perfect conjugation. So one of the first things to remember, just kind of, what is a weak verb? It's going to have gutturals in the first, in the second, or in the third position in the stem. So in certain forms, the first position gutturals and the second position gutturals, and in their paradigms, the chataf appears under the guttural consonant instead of a vocal schwa. This spelling change is caused by the fact that gutturals cannot take a vocal schwa. We studied that earlier on, and that's exactly why these changes occur. A lot of times when gutturals are present, the letters start behaving, the vowels start behaving in an unusual way. And so this is one of these situations. As you could see at the first position guttural word, we have the verb amad, to stand, so amadtem. And what you see here is the chataf patach instead of a regular kamatz, or instead of a shva. In this case, since this is the second masculine plural form, normally it would have the shva, and that shva will be vocal, but you can't have a vocal shva underneath a guttural. Well, because you can't really, vocalize it that way. So essentially, what you have is a chataf patach, and it consistently, in the places where that occurs, the chataf patach is being inserted. Now, in the same thing happens when there's a second guttural in the stem. You have the verb bahar. Bahar means to choose. So you look at the third person feminine singular. You have normally there would be a shva under the second stem consonant, and that would be the normal case. But we have a second stem letter is a guttural, so you can't have a shva, a vocal shva underneath it. Therefore, you have a chataf patach. So you have bahara. And also, I'll notice the med tag over there as well. Once again, this is the third person feminine singular and common plural. I pointed those out to you in the previous chapter. It's helpful to know why I was doing that, is so that you can remember later on. So here's the paradigm of the first position or gutturals and the second position gutturals. When guttural occurs, and also in the third position, the hey and the ayin. So that's what this paradigm is about. And you can see the strong verbs are listed on the right side here, and then the weak ones of different varieties are listed across. You have three basically categories of weak and one category of strong. So with the strong ones, now that you have that memorized and you understand how that works and that pattern is imprinted in your mind, now we can look at the weak ones and see what's different about it. See how they don't want to behave in the traditional strong verb fashion, but they have to make adaptations and adjustments. And there are several adaptations in these paradigms. So I'm going to start with the Ahmad here. As you can see that Ahmad still follows the same pattern. There is that Kamatz and the Patach pattern of the vowels. So everything is going good and normal. You have a first position. The first letter is a guttural one. Until you get to the second person masculine plural, you don't really have a problem. Why? Well, because in the second person masculine plural is where the first where the shva appears under the first letter, and that's a vocal shva because it's in the first position. So you have the form amadtem. Well, you have to vocalize it, and that's why you have the chataf patach taking place of the shva. And the same thing happens in the plural, feminine plural, second person feminine plural, you plural. So you have amad ten. Once again, chataf patach replaces the shva. So if you look right here on the strong verbs to the very right side, you see that it has katal ten. So that is the vocal shva there under the kuf. And the same thing as the katal 10. That's not possible if you have the first consonant as a guttural. So that's why the adaptation. So basically, you don't have to memorize much over here because you already know this entire paradigm. The only difference is that remember that in the second person masculine plural and masculine in feminine plural, where normally the vocal shva will come under the first letter, it can't happen, so it replaces by hatah patah. See now, hopefully you understand why I told you that memorizing the strong call perfect paradigm was a good idea, because now you already know how to deal with the first position weak verb. So if the weakness of the verb is that first consonant, then you know that it's going to follow the same pattern of the strong verbs only until you get to the second person masculine plural and feminine plural. It's going to misbehave. And now you know exactly what that behavior is. So you have, essentially two patterns memorized. That's why I asked you to study the strong call paradigm and know it well. And now look at the second, when the guttural is in the second stem letter, you have the verb bahar, which follows the same, kamatz patach pattern over here. But when you get to the third feminine singular, remember, there is the second letter receives a vocal shva here. And once again, what you have is chataf patach replacing that vocal shva, because you cannot have a vocal shva under a guttural. So the same exact situation occurs in the third person common plural. And as we look at that ending, at that situation, we see the same behavior, where you have the shva that would have been, you can see the katal right here. So it says katzlu, right here you have the vocal shva, and you can't have it under a guttural, so therefore it will be replaced with hataf patach. And once again, knowing the strong paradigm, you can make these adjustments because you know that's what's going to happen in the verbs in a strong paradigm. So now knowing what you know, with a verb that is a weak in the second letter, then you can make that adjustment. So essentially now you remember three paradigm. You see how why we studied the call perfect paradigm is because it becomes a pattern for us, and now we just have to make slight adjustments to it as we study the different weaknesses of verbs. So look at the verb shama, and you have the same paradigm that keeps following. Everything is good so far until you get to the second person feminine singular. Because the a letter over here is the third position. This is a third position hey or third position ayin. Either one of those letters will behave the same way. Here is where you have a vocal shva. And once again, it cannot be there, so it's replaced with the patah. And those are your major changes. Everything else stays the same. So now you know that in the third position hey and the third position ayin, the only one that is going to change is the second person feminine singular, where there is a vocal shva, and instead of katalt, it would be you would have that patach over there, shama'at. So that's something to hold on to. You could see how knowing the strong paradigm now, it becomes a lot easier studying these rules. Now we get to another category of verbs that is a third position aleph. When aleph is in that third place, we have most of the words in Hebrew, of course, are triconsonantal. And so you have three consonants, and that third consonant in that root is an aleph. That's a bit problematic. Why? Because aleph is silent. If aleph doesn't have anything underneath it, of course it's going to be silent. And on the end of the word, it's going to be silent. There's nothing underneath it. So there is a different pattern which it follows. Now notice that the vowels have changed. The actual vowels have changed. We usually had kamatz and patach. Now we have kamatz and kamatz. So matzah is our verb that we're going to try things on. And here you have the kamatz and kamatz. And so the stem vowel is actually going to be kamatz in every situation except the third person feminine singular and third person common plural. When we talk about the stem vowel, once again, we're talking about the vowel of the second consonant in the root of in the stem. We're not talking about the first consonant. We're talking about the second consonant. That's what stem vowel means. The vowel underneath the second consonant. So the expected silent shva under the third root consonant of many of the inflected forms is absent. It's not going to be there because once again you have that aleph in that position, so you can't have a vocal shva under aleph. So and then the dagesh lene will also be present in the initial consonant. It will not be in this case. So let's look at the paradigm for the aleph appearing in the third position in the verb. This is another weak verb, and once again we have a strong paradigm on the right side, and the paradigm for a weak verb is the one that we are exploring right now. Notice the changes, notice the differences. Well, the first difference that you should notice right away is that there is a pattern of the kamatz. You can see that there's the vowels change, where you have kamatz patach here you have kamatz. So matzah, although it sounds the same, it's both of them saying the actual vowel has changed, and it will change all the way. Now, where it will not change, third feminine singular and third common plural. Why? Because the second position, the stem vowel is shva. Typically, here you can see it is shva here, it is shva here, and it follows that pattern. So where there is a substitution of the the kamats for the patah in most of these places, it does not occur in the third person feminine singular and in the third person common plural. But other than that, the rest should be familiar to you once again. So a third position aleph, when aleph is that third consonant in the stem, you could see how they behave. And this is another paradigm that you need to be familiar with, not necessarily memorize it, but it's a good one to know. Because once you understand the rules of why things do what they do, it will be a lot easier for you to recognize these. So when you start seeing that pattern of the kamats, you're saying, what's going on here? What's the root? Well, here you can figure out the root. So as far as the perfect call paradigm goes, you could see that the strong verbs really create a good pattern for you to follow. You just need to now superimpose the ideas that the weak verbs are not going to behave 100%, and you have to learn those few behaviors to be able to differentiate between them. So the spelling of the third position hey verbs is kind of similar, because whether you have a hey in the third position or the aleph in the third position, there's a lot more similarity between those two gutturals than between a consonant that's not a guttural. So the irregularities, are occasioned by the loss of the final hey form here. This is a little bit different. With hey, what happens? It simply disappears. Where the aleph sticks around, the hey just is gone. And I want you to see that that's going to happen, and the hey is going to disappear, and the tav will come in to distinguish those forms. The tav will appear. Also, a distinctive hirik yod in the stem vowel will appear. And that's helpful to remember that in the hey, when the hey is in third position, that is going to, the hirik yod is going to be present. So while it is similar to, both of these situations that we've been looking at is a third position weak letter in a verb, how hey behaves is different from the way aleph behaves. So, so in this third position aleph paradigm, the dagesh lene basically disappeared, and it's also going to be absent from the tav in this paradigm as well. So here's your third position hey, and the paradigm for these types of verbs. The verb that, once again, on the right side is the strong, and on the left is the weak. And we're looking at the verb bana. Bana. Bana means to build. So you have the katal right here, the one we've been studying, it's strong, and you have bana. Now, first thing you notice right away is, once again, the vowels. You have the kamats rather than kamats patah. So that's because the verb is already weak, and this is a third position weak verb. So that's normal. But notice what happens with the hey. The hey just simply drops out and is replaced by tav. So you have, instead of bana, you have ban ta. Ban ta. Look what happened. It was replaced by the tav. And in the second person masculine singular, the hirik yod comes in under the stem vowel. The stem vowel is that second consonant, and then there's a vowel under it. And here you have banita. Banita. Look what happened. The noon gets the hirik yod vowel. And that's very different from the strong verb. You can see what happened here. It's quite different. So hey in the third position is unique in its behavior. So the second person, masculine and the feminine, also get the hirik yod. The common singular first person gets the hirik yod, and it continues all the way through. Now, that not an issue, sort of say, in a third person common plural, but it definitely is an issue everywhere. So remember that the appearance of the tav in the third person feminine singular, that's an odd thing, and then and the dropping out of the hey and the appearing of the hirik yod to replace it. So something this is a tough one. I would suggest to spend a little extra time on looking at that, so make sure that you have a good grasp on this paradigm, because what's going to happen is you might not need to memorize it, but you need to quickly understand what the rules are and how and why these particular letters change their places. So when you do come in contact with this, you will have a better grasp. Then we also have something that we call a doubly weak verbs. Doubly weak verbs. Now, doubly weak verbs are the verbs that have more than one guttural letter in them. And that's a tough one now, because remember, you have a paradigm that kind of relies on a number of things, and now you have replaced two of those letters with weak letters. So there's going to be more than one change that's going to occur in the doubly weak verb paradigm. So first of all, look at the right side. You still have your katal paradigm, the strong verbs, so you can at least compare them side by side. This is just like in your textbook when you're looking at that. That's why they give it to you in that way. But notice that you have the first position guttural and the second position guttural verbs here. You have, and both of them are ending with a hey. Okay, so that's, it's a hey ending, and the second, because they're doubly weak, is the first position guttural, second position guttural. So you have the verb ala and ra'ah. And notice once again, you have the kamatz, not a kamatz patach, because this is a weak verb. And the biggest changes, let's look at ra'ah first, is of course because of the hey drops out, and you have the tav. Well, wait a minute, we just looked at that. That's exactly what we're talking about. The third position hey, because this is ra'ah and hey in this third position, we just learned that rule. But because you also have a second position guttural here, and that guttural is aleph, and normally there would be a vocal shva there, you have a hataf patach appearing instead of the shva. So please look at that vowel and remember, but you already know that rule, because you know in the second position, when the guttural is in the second position and the verb is weak, and you get to third person feminine singular, you know that there's going to be a vocal schwa there, so you know that something's going to have to happen because the guttural can't take a vocal schwa. So we already studied that rule, and this is where really having a good grasp on paradigms will help you to recognize what is what. So then the hey, of course, drops out, and you have the hirik yod. The hirik yod follows all the way through the rest of the paradigm. So you could see really where the doubly weak part plays out is in that third person feminine singular. That's where you have the double changes actually happen in this verb. Now let's look at the verb Allah and compare it with the katal. See how that works. What we have here is the first position weak letter, and we have ending with hey. Okay? So we know what's going to happen with hey. The hey is going to drop out. It's going to be replaced by a hirik yod. And we know that in a third person feminine singular, that hey is going to be replaced by a tav. So we know that's going to happen because we've already seen it happen in other situations. So we know how hey behaves. Now what we need to remember is what happens when there's a first position guttural. And that is going to be in the second person masculine plural and the second person feminine plural, remember there is a vocal shva right here. Here it is in katal. Katal 10, katal 10. You have that vocal shva, and because vocal shva cannot go under a guttural, you have a hataf patach. So everything else stays the same. The hirik yod stays all the same because of the hay that dropped out. But now you have to remember the second person masculine plural and second person feminine plural, that there's a shva, and that shva has to be compensated. So hataf patach comes in and takes over for that. So hopefully that's starting to make sense. What I want you to see is the rules built upon rules. If you learned that rule early, and of course if you know the paradigm, you can compare this and say, I see the difference. Now, second part is if you learn the rule of how the weak verbs behave with the first letter being guttural, now it's not so much difficult now to deal with the doubly weak verbs, because all you're doing is combining the two rules you already know. And be able to figure that out. Now, the Geminite verbs are a little bit different. What are Geminite verbs? Geminite verbs are verbs that have the second and the third consonants the same. Look what happens here. We have two verbs that are being used, and that is savav. Savav means to turn around, to spin, and arar means to curse. Tam or tamim here is complete or perfect. That's what it works. That's what it means. And what happens with the geminate? Well, you can almost guess that the second consonant that keeps repeating is going to drop out. So look, in the first person feminine singular, you have still savava. So you have savav. Savav follows the pattern of the kamatz patach in a strong call, perfect conjugation. So we have savav, savava, and then it dropped out. Sa. You have you lost that second bet, or vet. I guess you lost it over there, and it becomes sabut. And what you see is the dagesh forte in the bets, showing you that this was the doubling. There was two letters there that became one, and basically from then on, that second letter, the duplicating letter, the twin letter, is lost. Only in the third person common plural it appears again, as it does in the third person masculine singular. Everywhere else, that letter dropped out and has been replaced by dagesh forte. And then you had also what we call a connecting vowel appear. The connecting vowel is the holem vav. Holem vav. So not only the second consonant dropped out and assimilated and became a dagesh, now we have a connecting vowel, and that connecting vowel is holem vav, and it works all the way through the paradigm. Now it's consistent, because if you look at the arur, it's going to do the same exact thing. It's going to mimic it for us, as both of them are going to have the connecting vowel. Both of them are going to have the second consonant that's repeating a consonant drop out after the third person feminine singular, and it's going to repeat in a third person common plural, but everywhere else is going to drop out. Well, obviously you cannot put a dagesh into it inside of a resh, so that can't do anything about that. But still, the dropping out is the same pattern. And basically, that's what your Gemini verbs do. You can look at the strong paradigm, compare them once again. This is in your textbook. Look over. If you need to pause this video, look it over, study it out, that's perfectly fine. If you're already starting to get tired, and this video is already getting too complicated, just pause it. Read your chapter, look at it, check it out, look over it, and then you can restart this video again. So I totally understand if you're at this point already saturated with all the changes and the vowels and maybe something needs to be refreshed before you can move on. That's perfectly fine. You can go ahead and do that. So let me show you what happens with the Gemini verbs here. The first thing that happens is there's the assimilation of the consonant. So we had two bets. One of them went away. And it becomes a dagesh. The Holem vav comes in as the connecting vowel. You have the ending, the ta. That's a traditional ending. Only in this case, you lose the dagesh lene, goes away. So it still sounds the same, it's still there, but the dagesh lene goes away. And so the spelling of Geminites is a little bit different from the other ones, but hopefully the verbal forms that we've gone through so far help you to understand why this happens, what's the necessity. The other class that is important to understand, and this is the last class that I want you to understand in our chapter, is the biconsonantal verbs. And the biconsonantal verbs are composed of two consonants versus the three consonants. Normally we have verbs with three consonants, but these are strange. So these verbs are called sometimes hollow verbs, or the second position yod-vav verbs. It doesn't really matter what they're called. I just want you to realize that the yod and vav are supposed to be originally in between those letters, and at some point this disappeared, so they're not there. And so you have this hollow space, and that's why they call them hollow verbs, is because they're missing a letter. And so biconsonantal verbs behave differently, because what happens with them is they gain their letters back eventually. But having only two letters in a root is going to cause a bit of confusion. So in the lexicon, the biconsonantal verbs are not listed in their call perfect third person masculine singular form. They are actually listed in the construct form, infinitive construct form. And so you could see, if you look at the infinitive construct form, you will actually see the vowels that went missing. So kam was actually at some point kum. Kum is the more fuller part of that word. So the vav went missing here, and that's where we can kind of see that. So you can already tell that there's going to be a little bit of an unusual situation, because this, by having been a biconsonantal verb, we're already getting into that territory. So look what happens with these verbs. We have the strong and the weak, and our regular strong katal paradigm that we've been studying all along, side by side, and you can compare them and see what changes actually happen. And there's a number of changes that occur, but the way biconsonantal verbs behave is unique in that sense. So this is I'm not going to go through all the changes, but right now, because you can look through, as I've explained to you, all the changes in the previous situations, you can look at this situation and see the difference. The specific changes are actually described in your textbooks and explained to you in greater detail. And just for the purpose of looking at this, I want you to know it. I don't expect you to memorize this entire chart. Biconsonantal verbs is not such a common occurrence, but I want you to be aware of them and be ready to recognize them. So that's something that is important. And that's pretty much brings this chapter 14 to a conclusion. There's more advanced information in that chapter, but I think we are pretty, sort of say, overwhelmed even with the non-advanced information because there's a lot of endings. This is a lot of variations to the paradigm. Once again, I'll reiterate: if you studied the strong call paradigm in the previous chapter, then this chapter makes more sense if that knowledge is implicit. So that's pretty much it for now. I do want to go over some vocabulary words with you, though. You can follow along with me on page 161 in your textbooks if you want to look over some of these vocabulary words with you, but I'm going to read off the vocabulary. The first verb is bow. Bow means to go in, to enter, to come to. The second one is bana. Bana means to build or build up, to build, to establish. It could be a family or a building. The third is yalad, means to bring forth or to bear. This is related to childbirth. Yare is to fear, to be afraid, to be in awe. And yarad is to go down, to come down, or to descend. Lakach is to take, to grasp, to capture, to seize, to lay hold of. Mut is to die. Nafal is to fall prostrate, or to fall upon. Either way. Nasa means to lift, to carry, to raise, to bear, like a load or a burden, or to take away. Allah means to go up, to ascend. Avar means to pass over, to pass through, to pass by, or to cross. Amad means to stand, to take up one stand, or to stand still. These are all verbs that it's good for you to study and know, because your quizzes are always based on vocabulary from that week. The next one on page 162 is kum. Kum means to rise, to arise, to get up, to stand. Kara is to call, to summon, to proclaim, to announce, or to even read aloud. Sim is to set up, to put in place, to lay upon, or to establish. And shuv is to turn back, to return, or to go back. The non-verbs vocabulary here is po. That means here or in this place. So that is our vocabulary. Please study the weak verbs and don't neglect the vocabulary, because usually it shows up on the quiz, and all the sentences on the quizzes, all the phrases on the quizzes usually include new vocabulary. That doesn't mean you have to forget the previous weeks of vocabulary, but the new vocabulary is always included in the current week of quiz. So please pay attention to that.